time is now 6:30, and I'll call this meeting to order. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we'll start with roll call. Start, Sean.
Virginia Allen, James Jordan,
Stephanie Walsh.
Linda Fedor, Lisa Garrett,
Kevin Kader.
And with Naomi not being here, I would like to give Kevin voting rights tonight. First thing on the agenda is accepting the minutes from the March 18th, 2026 meeting.
I'll make a motion.
Any further discussion before? Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, motion carries. Okay, next is accepting the minutes from the March 25th, 2026 meeting.
Move to accept. I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, motion carries. And then, any abstentions? Okay. So next is the presentation from the Board of Education proposal of the fiscal budget for 2026-2027. If you'd like to come up.
Thank you. Do I need to press something to turn this on to broadcast? Switch.
Green light on the back.
Got the green light?
Thank you, everyone.
There we go.
My name is Paul Brenton. I'm superintendent of schools here in Plainfield, Connecticut. This will actually be the 5th budget that I've presented before the Board of Finance here in my time. I'd like to thank Samantha Darenthal, who is one of our board members, who's going to be helping me to move forward the slides. So the goal, when we put together a budget, we always start with our goals. So our mission here in Plainfield is to make sure every student feels belonging and to meet the needs of the students. This is not just an academic presentation, it's a presentation about how we keep our schools safe, how we help our students lead healthy lives and become productive members of the community and the workforce. Our mission here is to balance the things that we need to balance by making sure we focus on what matters. What matters for us, for our students, is that we have clear expectations for our schools, that we have positive relationships, that we operate in a collaborative culture, not just within our schools, but the town of Plainfield, with the boards, taking part in things like the Capital Improvement Committee so that we can all partner together towards one solution. Student voice matters, growth matters, and ultimately the results matter. If you take a look at the story of our schools, you can go forward. I'm going to talk to you about a few different things. If you've been reading the news, you're going to hear the same story from school districts throughout the country. There are 3 major things that are driving the budgets this year. The first one is the rising cost of insurance, and I'm going to talk the majority of that based on how insurance is driving. You'll see that some of our neighbor towns, one of them just turned in a 9% increase to their town. That's almost entirely insurance. The second thing that's driving this is transportation. You'll hear people talking about rising transportation and transportation costs. And the third thing that's driving this is special education and rising special education costs. The budget that we've put together tries to control 2 of these 3 factors, really 3 of these 3 factors through partnership with the town as best as possible. You're going to see me talk to fixed charges. You'll see that of the increase we're presenting, 61%, approximately $950,000 of our total budget is simply the increase in insurance. We're also going to talk about strategic staffing. As I presented for the last 2 years, we engaged with the New England Council of Schools to look at our projected enrollments, and we're making some adjustments in our staffing based on enrollments. The next thing you're going to see is we're going to talk about trying to maintain programs. This is the 5th budget I've presented. For the last 4 years when I've presented this budget and we've made cuts, we've had to make cuts to programming. And what's been cut the last 3 years is computers and mathematics programming. If you take a look at how our schools have done, specifically in our performance, you'll see we've actually been slowly climbing in almost all areas. Moosup's been doing outstanding. Again, all 3 of our schools are elementary schools of distinction. You will notice in our ELA scores that Shepherd Hill took a dip last year in their scores based on all of the transitions that happened in Shepherd Hill. If you remember, Shepherd Hill had new construction. We moved all of our pre-K programs back to Shepherd Hill. We moved our central office to Shepherd Hill. We moved family resource to Shepherd Hill. That's the first year Shepherd Hill scores have dipped since my time here. But if you look at the graph to the right, you'll see our math scores largely have been flat. This budget invests heavily in mathematics curriculum and in mathematics professional development so that we can be sure we hit those. At our Board of Education meeting next Wednesday, you're going to see us producing some data on just how successful the climate is. I'm actually going to have some people testifying about the impact of the school resource officer. We're down to less than 50% of the physical altercations that we had as of January 1 last year, this January 1. The school system last year as a whole had 10 what we would consider serious physical altercations or fights. This year we've had 1. The difference in our schools based on climate, based on the increased security, based on our new strategy has been significant, and that's something that we're trying to maintain within this budget. You're going to see us talk about our 6-year plan. You're going to hear me talk about math. I had someone on Facebook who's saying, why do you have such a large increase in your admin line? That large increase in our admin line is computers and math. That's where those numbers are. You'll also see us talking about the social emotional needs and the need to maintain support staff such as guidance staff and other pieces that we maintain that we added following COVID. The budget that I'm presenting represents a 3.99% budget increase over the previous budget, $1,562,180. We tried very hard to keep that down to 4% because we had a partnership with the town where we discussed realistically where we thought we could be. When we take a look at what this is, we have the additional challenge that throughout all of Eastern Connecticut, we have less students, so we anticipate less revenue coming in next year. We have one of the smallest classes we've seen in Sterling in their 8th grade. We're also seeing fewer students regionally, so we know Plainfield High School will be smaller than it is this year. We've accounted for that, we've projected for that, that's all part of our budget and numbers we've submitted. When we take a look at how this breaks down, I'd like to point out that there are some places where we've made cuts to offset. Our salary line is increasing about $240,000. That benefit line, we've made cuts to lower that number from where it could have been. That $911,000 includes cuts that we've made to offset some of those insurance costs. We've cut over $100,000 in purchase services. We've made cuts in dues and fees. We've made adjustments in equipment and supplies to try to keep that number to a reasonable place. If you take a look at the reductions that we made in this budget to reach 4%, they were significant. At Shepherd Hill Elementary School, we're cutting 2 teachers based on enrollment. At Moosup Elementary School, we are cutting 2 elementary teachers based on enrollment. At Plainfield Memorial School, the enrollment's increasing, so we're restoring one of those grade 5 teachers. Plainfield Central Middle School, we lost a grant that was funding 1 certified position, so this position's going based on the loss of grant. Plainfield High School, as I mentioned, will probably have the smallest incoming freshman class we've seen in the last 12 years. We're making adjustments for that by reducing 4 certified positions and 1 non-certified position. I should tell you those are all largely based on retirement. For pupil services, we've redefined part of what we're doing. 1 program social workers being redistributed, 4 part-time paraeducators. None of our full-time community members, but 4 part-time positions are being reduced. On the district level, we are reducing 1 IT position. We are reducing 1 full-time grounds and maintenance position to part-time, and we're taking 1 12-month administrator to 10 months. You'll notice that we actually talked about that in last year's budget, but we don't actually make that savings until this year's budget based on how the contracts play out. To understand the impact of health insurance, you're going to see me talk about it again. If you look at the last 3 budgets, there's several years where I've projected a 1% increase in health insurance. In fact, there was a time 3 years ago, Mr. Cunningham's in the room, he'll remember that we were doing so well in health insurance, we actually had a give back to employees. There was 1 month where it was so strong. The changes in the way health service is being delivered, I'm going to tell you that these are largely due to prescriptions. These are largely due to things like Ozempic and those other sort of pieces, and I've got to be cautious as I talk about this. I want people to be healthy. Our health insurance line is going up $951,000. If we were flat, The budget I'm presenting would be a 1.56% increase. That's how many adjustments we've had to make instead of the 3.99 to accommodate to the town of Plainfield that rising cost of insurance, and that is a fixed cost. Without the cost of that insurance, we're only an increase of $610,000 and $611,000. If we want to talk about the total proposed benefits for insurance, that's where you see the largest increase. That's an 18.1% increase to our budget. That means that this number accounts for 60% of the total budget growth. I would say that this is not something that we're going to see every year in this line, but we are making an adjustment, and this is a market adjustment of where the market is right now. Other key drivers you're going to have me talk about, when we look at our pupil services budget, this is our special education budget. This is where you hear some communities talking about the fact that this is getting very high. Our non-public special ed tuition increased significantly. We have reduced 4 part-time paraeducators, and we've done all we can to bring in specialized services so that these specialized services that are coming in are things that we can do. So if you look at the programs at our school, at Shepherd Hill Elementary School, we have a self-contained program on the second floor. It takes up 5 classrooms. We have ILP and RSP programs at almost every one of our schools except for Moosup, so that we can have as many students serviced in our communities and serviced in our schools, so that we're not outplacing to the tune of $100,000 to $300,000 every child that comes in. We're building our capacity. We've been very successful with BCBAs. On my Wednesday board meeting this Wednesday, a question came up from a member of the community. Mr. Brent, you've mentioned how BCBAs are making this program happen. What does a BCBA do? I thought it was a great question. It was actually emailed directly to me. So on Wednesday of next week, we actually have our BCBAs coming in explaining what they do, what it means to be a behavioral consultant in the school, to help students with behavior, to help staff deal with students who have behavioral needs. Our enrollment next year is predicted to be right around 1,800 students across 5 schools. That does not include the special education students. If you look in your full binders, you may say, Paul, that number is a little higher in the binder you gave us. It is. Look down at that postgraduate number, because we still service special needs students now actually up to age 22. Yep. See eyebrows raised there. That's the change in the law. So we service those students up to age 22. As you can see, this is our historic district enrollment and our enrollment that's projected out to 2033. NESDEC does this for school districts in Connecticut, so you can see that, and this interestingly was done for the district prior to my arrival. And we did it again and had them reaffirm it when we did the facilities study, because we wanted to present those numbers to the town, so that facilities number was 2023. So here we are in 2025, 2026, heading into 26, 27. This predicted we would be at 1,800 students. We were higher than that when they did this study. We are at 1,795 students. So I think this has proven over time to be fairly accurate with where we are. How those are broken up, about 360 at Shepherd Hill, 227 at Moosup, broken up over the 4 grades that we have there. That's why we're able to reduce 2 teachers and distribute. Plainfield Memorial School will have 301 students, Plainfield Central School 413. And as I said, we're predicting the smallest incoming class we've had in Plainfield High School. So Plainfield High School will dip just below 500 students for next year based on what we're predicting. As far as other students go, Ellis Tech has 121 students from our community. Norwich Tech has 30 students. Killenly-Boag has approximately 20 students. Those are our projections. I will tell you that we're hearing from the State Department of Education that they're looking to increase the number of students accepted in the technical schools. We average for Ellis Tech, coming from our 8th grade, if you look at those numbers, about 30 students accepted. If they increase that and said they were going to increase 40 or 45 students, we would see that number climb. Because we do throughout, especially today, as more and more students are looking at the need to graduate with certifications, we're seeing an increased number of applications to those programs. We are responding to this by offering more certifications in our schools. You may have noticed on our Facebook page or at our district website that we now offer CNA certification in night classes. It's a great group of kids working in the evening. We're offering industrial certifications for our students that we have, and we've brought East Town's adult ed, which used to take place in Killingly, into Plainfield. That's now operating out of our community so that we can service those students more. We have 83 students currently in magnet schools, and 20 students are in special ed outplacements that we pay for. We estimate that homeschool number to be about 120. Now, if you ask Paul, why is that an estimated number? At this time, there's actually no requirement that homeschool families let us know they're homeschooling. Many states have that requirement. Some states actually have requirements they submit what they're doing. In Connecticut, and by our board policy, we request that if someone is homeschooling, that they let us know, and we add their information to their system. Those students actually will receive some notifications from the school. So for example, if I send out a notification that we're having a community day, or that when we send out information on Family Resource Center, if their information's in that, everybody who's on that mailing list gets that information through the emails. So we estimate that number to be about 120 students, or we estimate there's about 10 homeschool kids.
Could some of those be private schools, like Putnam Science Academy, St. James?
So Putnam Science Academy, I'm not even sure they're still open, to be honest, but we don't, St. James, we have their information. I don't know how many kids are thankful with the RTSA.
Just was curious, if the private schools can show up.
Sure. Let's go back one. So when we take a look at how many classes will be in each school, because if you said, Paul, take a look at those numbers where we are. We're going to be running 4 classes of pre-K and 1 full-day pre-K. The full-day pre-K is very important to us primarily because the state changed the kindergarten entry age. And I know there are some families who feel very strongly about this. I took a phone call from one this week. To get into kindergarten now, you must be 5 by the start of the school year. That has changed in that there used to be waivers. The state's changed so that this year there's only waivers if the board has adopted a policy. Next year the state's not allowing any waivers. So they have a September 1st start date for that. We had families who had planned to have their kids in kindergarten, but they're not able to based on the state and based on those guidelines. So we offer a full-day pre-K as well, in addition to the half-day, of course. We will have in grades K through 3, 12 classes. That means there will be 3 classes for each grade. At Moose Up, the same thing. In grades K through 3, we will have 12 classes. You'll notice that I added a teacher at Memorial based on the size. We will have 8 classes in grade 4, 7 classes in grade 5. If there was more flexibility in the budget, if you were to say, Paul, what would you add? I would add another grade 5 classroom. The reason in our initial budget proposals, we had another grade 5 classroom based on the sizes right now. However, I was working very hard with the town to deliver a budget at 4%. If you take a look at the next slide actually talks about our full budget evolution. So we start our budget process in October. And the truth of the matter is I'm always questioning. I'm always asking questions like, if the state wants us to go to alternative fuel buses, how do I talk to DAGCO about propane buses and not electric buses, because I believe long-term they'll cost the town less. My business manager, Courtney and Brandon, meet 3 times a week, 4 times a week, going over budgets and following those pieces. When we did our first budget submission, that was without reducing the 18 positions that are now reduced, going through and asking for everything we had, we would have presented a budget that was similar to what you're seeing regionally. Our first number was 9.9%. I knew that I couldn't present 9.9% to the town of Plainfield. I took that budget and reduced that to 6.4. We made that with other adjustments, working with the team, working very hard, digging very deeply, reassigning places, to a 4.63 before ultimately the Board of Education produced a 3.99, which is under 4%, which is what I told the town that we would work very hard to deliver. This means that during the process, we went from 3.57 million to 1.562 million, or we reduced from our initial request almost 2 million already. I had someone say, Paul, why don't you take it to the Board of Finance and let them make those cuts? The reality is because I'm trying to, in an open and transparent way, present to you what I think is the best budget we can present. And that's at a $1.5 million increase. I know some people don't want to read the entire pieces, so we put this together largely off of questions and comments that we had about where the increases, where are things taking place. This is a summary document that you have that's also on our website. It's important to us that we invest in safety and wellness. We are trying to shift the focus to early numeracy. I really do not want to make additional cuts to the math program. When people ask why are there increases in the admin line, we can show you exactly where those are. That's the purchase of computers that we've cut for the past 3 years, that we've had in our budget and we've made those reductions. So this is where things fall. I have, as part of this presentation, and I sent all the board members of the Board of Finance, I actually have 62 slides I can go through. But all of you have the full budget binder. Many of you have given us additional pieces. I thought the best thing I could do was to stop here and answer any specific questions individuals may have.
I did have a question. You had mentioned the grade 5, you would like to have a teacher. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but how many students would be in each classroom?
I do know the answer to that. Give me a second. And Mrs. Brandon may beat me to the page. So if you take a look at your binder, we have a page right here, which actually lists our projected enrollment in every single grade. And what we're looking at for Plainfield Memorial School next year, we are looking at 148 students in grade 8 and roughly the same number, 148 students in grade 4 in 8 classrooms and roughly the same number in grade 5. So if you take a look at 148 students, and that number is based on our current enrollment.
21.
Yep. So that's what we're looking at.
Thank you.
Mr. Brennan, when you go into contract negotiation, salary negotiation for union contracts, do you look at merit salary increase or performance appraisal based on state mandates of levels for grades in the schools? I'm specifically talking about the state target for performance index, for district performance index is about 75, and it looks like the ELA we're at 61 roughly, math at 57, and science at about 60. So when we're looking at teachers and the work that they do with our students, how do you scope out a teacher who is more effective perhaps than another one?
So I'll give you 2 answers to that. There's really 2 questions there. The first question is based on those numbers. So when you look at those numbers are state targets. They're not based on state average, they're not based on regional average, they're not based on how we perform against other places in the region. So if you go back to maybe my 5th slide where we have that chart and we look at some of that performance. The way we track performance of students is on 2 different places. One of them is we track how many students are at benchmark. The second thing we track is how many students are within growth. That performance in this number is based on both factors. How many students are at benchmark, how much are at growth. That number doesn't take into account for the state how many students are free and reduced lunch, how many students are special education, how many students may have 504, physical disabilities, or other needs. It's simply a guideline of benchmark. When we do our data dives very deeply into all of those numbers, taking a look at those pieces. When we look at evaluating our staff, this data is part of every staff's evaluation. It's built into those pieces. But when we evaluate these numbers, we look at 3 different things, and it's part of the instructional form. You can look at what the teacher is doing, but the other 2 things you have to look at is what the student is doing, and then the rigor of the work. And we try to build habits of work in students so that we can get that student behavior to increase the academics and to partner with the parents. When you ask about negotiations, I would say that the largest factor in all pieces within negotiations is what I would call market rate for those positions. For those who know my history as an educator, I actually started as a paraeducator. Today's National Paraeducators Day, and our paraeducators here are amazing. In 1996, I was a one-on-one paraeducator. I had gone to school to be a teacher. I had a full teaching degree. However, in 1996, 1997, there was a large number of teachers and a very small number of teaching positions. That's not the situation that we're in today. Today we're in a situation where if you're looking next year, I probably need to hire a Spanish teacher. We actually posted that job today, April 1st, anticipating it because Spanish teachers are that difficult to find. It's the same case for chemistry, for physics, for second language, for special education. 15 years ago, you would hear stories about teachers taking pay freezes. The reality is now there's so many openings that if you freeze your staff salaries, or if you ask people for a freeze, two things are going to happen. First thing that's going to happen is staff is going to leave because there's openings everywhere and teachers are very mobile these days. In fact, everyone in education is very mobile these days. And we're looking at a community that's about to also offer a large series of entry-level positions, which is going to impact my custodians, para-educators, and other people. As I saw in the news that Uline is going to be interviewing me on the 11th. So we know those things are going to be affecting and driving the budget. And Uline coming to town paying what they're advertised to be paying is above what I'm paying my para-educators who are excellent and my custodians and some other people that may consider looking at those roles. So I'm conscious of that. So when we take a look at those pieces, one of the things we have to consider for salaries is market rate. The second thing that happens is if I lose someone because I ask them to freeze, because it's so competitive, I'm probably going to have to hire someone who actually makes more than that person, or is at a higher step to get someone to move. Because there simply aren't people at the lower steps that are looking to move, and many other towns are incentivizing people to do so. So actually the least expensive way, there's been Harvard studies and other things on this, to maintain your workforce is to have a happy workforce that you retain and train and invest in. And for that reason, whenever anyone says, do you think your teaching staff is open to a freeze, I try to explain why long term I don't think we want to do that. I don't think it ever saves you money over 3 years.
Has the district ever thought about working in collaboration with, I don't know, UConn, with teacher training? And
we do. So we partner both with UConn, with Southern, with Eastern. The reality is given retirements, there are more openings right now in Connecticut than there are teachers in the pipeline or have been teachers in the pipeline. We're actually seeing, I have two outstanding teachers at the high school who both retired from Rhode Island and came into Connecticut because we're close enough to be there and they're taking some extra years after retirement. But it's a very different market and we have some very excellent people we're lucky to have. I just saw Mamma Mia this weekend at Plainfield High School. For anyone who saw it, it was outstanding. I'm still singing the songs in my head. The staff that volunteered their time to do that brought those pieces in. The kids who were shy and timid in middle school who were on stage dancing. I saw a boy with his shirt off dancing in scuba gear that I didn't think would talk to anyone when he left 8th grade, but those teachers have brought that out of those kids. I think it's hard to measure that in a test.
I don't disagree with you at all. I'm a little concerned about the heating costs in some of the schools have gone up so significantly. And I'm seeing what I thought I read that they were contracted with, one of them was 40%.
So this is when I ask Mrs. Brand to come to the mic because I get myself in trouble if I say what I think I know.
Would you be able to share what location you're looking at?
Yeah.
I will speak generally to last year was my first budget presentation here in Plainfield, and I do know that the current budget 25-26, we did see an increase to 2 of our locations from previous years, and that was basically all based on actual values. Instead of just looking at budget numbers for our heating costs and doing a standard inflation percentage increase or a standard 3% increase, We really took a dive into each location to see actual costs spent for the 12 months, projected the increase working with those companies. So I know 2 locations last year did see quite an increase to this current fiscal year. If you share with me what you're looking at for next projected year.
Give me 1 second on that. I know. Most elementary was fine, it was only a 3% increase. I apologize. I think it was Plainfield middle?
Maybe Shepherd's Hill, the first one?
No, Shepherd Hill only showed, I thought it showed only a 3% when I did the calculations. It was like a 3%
Looks like
increase.
30,000. Don't have the percent, it's the one I'm looking at.
And yeah, Shepherd Hill, Plainfield Middle School was fine.
The only one that I can see from my records, if we don't see it specifically, we did, the largest increase in utility costs was at our high school. Right now, that increased from $452,000 in Object Code 410 to $472,000. So it's just under a $20,000 increase to that count line. And again, it was actually quite an increase in a couple of locations the year prior, mainly because we are actually looking at the actual amount spent on utilities. So in our high school, at the end of last fiscal year, we did a lot of heater repairs. So on top of the high school, we have the HVAC units, and we repaired, I want to say about 6 of them.
I think we had 11 total bills, but some of them were 2 bills.
So we did use a lot of funds at the end of the prior fiscal year to repair some of those rooftop units. With those rooftop units not running, we will use less electricity costs. With them all up and running, that could have been one of the increases that we projected in our utilities.
It was Shepherd Hill. They went from, you're going from 74 to 104? Yours?
And what else?
I'm not, oh, it's 620.
Okay, yes, in just the heat energy cost, yes.
Yeah.
Yep, and that is projected from that building. Shepherd Hill, the biggest difference that we saw is because we moved all of our ECC locations from FRC and central office are now located in Shepherd Hill, so that's one of the biggest changes, but.
More bodies, more need.
It was all based on the actual cost of what we're spending in electricity and the inflation rate that we get from Eversource.
If the members who were on the Board of Finance 2 years ago recall, when I presented the facilities study in 2023, the facilities study actually showed that Shepherd Hill was being utilized at something like 68% capacity. So when we closed the Early Childhood Center, that's the building right across from Agway, and we moved almost all of that programming, we occupied a whole series of classrooms that weren't being used. Some of them were being used for storage, and those heaters are now running, where they may not have been running previously. We know it's taking a toll on that building, which was built in 1994, because as I mentioned to the Board of Finance, the heater on top of the cafeteria went, and we actually had to bring in temporary heaters for a significant amount of time to the tune of about $2,000 a week to heat that during the coldest time when we were dealing with those other pieces. But that work's now being done. We also have put in for the District Repair and Improvement Program through the state of Connecticut. The acronym is the worst acronym ever devised by the state of Connecticut. It's literally called the DRIP program for making repairs, and we're utilizing that to the tune of approximately $120,000. I don't recall the exact number, but we're using that, and that's primarily for heater repair.
I'm curious about the football co-op. How is that working out? How many schools are involved in that right now?
So presently, that co-op, and I'll give you 2 answers to that. It was really nice to win on Thanksgiving Day and enjoy that game. So, you know, as far as how those things are working out, I think the kids are seeing tremendous success on the field. I think if you were to ask the kids, they worked very hard this summer to be one team and unite. At Plainfield High School, our numbers are significantly up, meaning that we have more kids playing football now that the co-op is there than we did prior to the co-op. And the reason for that is that we're now able to offer a junior varsity team. We're now able to offer a varsity team. We were in a situation before where if you were a freshman and you were a larger freshman, you may have to play the line on varsity because we simply didn't have enough students. Presently, it's students from Plainfield High School, it's students from Ellis Technical High School. We have Putnam and Turtelot, who are both participating in it well. It is the old Putnam, Turtelot, Ellis co-op. I would say that the largest participants in it are Plainfield and Ellis. I believe Putnam High School only had less than 4 students who were coming down, and I don't know, I think Putnam High School had less than 4 students. For those who don't know, I spent a long time in Putnam, so sometimes I mistakenly say Putnam and Plainfield, I transpose them. Ellis Tech, I believe, had less than 10.
So how is the cost for that program divvied out?
That's a great question. We actually have an operating agreement that the Board of Finance wants to see that based on where it is. Based on, we pay the head coaches, Ellis Tech pays the assistant coaches. All of that's laid out in an agreement. I believe it's actually been published in North Bulletin and WINY. If you'd like to see it afterwards, I can walk through and explain where each of those are and what those pieces are. The co-op also has an agreement, just so you know, Mr. Peterson, in case it were ever to break up, how that uniform gets divided and other pieces along those lines. I will say that it is largely participation-based.
I'm curious about that agreement because you're showing $4,000 for the first assistant coach.
I'll go through the entire,
And
I'll present
varsity
it.
coach.
I'll present it.
You've got a heavy coaching staff that we're paying, I'm wondering if we're paying the whole bill on that. Is my question.
We're not. I'm happy to present that.
Those are stipends that are listed?
Their contract section.
Salaries, the coaches contracts. And then like the equipment costs, how's that figured out? Are we picking up the bill on all that? Or?
We're not. But what I will do is I'll give you the agreement. I will say, I've never presented to the Board of Finance that before. I've presented to our Board of
Well,
Finance.
my concern is we're putting a lot of money right now in athletics.
We
And
do.
our education's hurting. We need our education to boost it a little bit. We got to be careful with what we're doing. Our first priority is educating our kids.
I would agree.
And we've got to get our education levels up. And I'd rather be more money into the education portion and be careful what we're doing over on this end. And if we're co-oping, we should be sharing expenses, that's all.
We are.
And I think we've got golf equipment on the budget this year for $1,000. What are we buying for equipment for golf?
We provide students their golf equipment if they're on the golf team.
We buying golf clubs?
No, they buy golf bags. They needed golf bags because the team had none. So the athletic director went and bought 8, sir, and they embroidered with the Plainfield logo.
Okay,
It
so.
still looked like a rabble on the course compared to every other school.
Sir,
Sir, I'm simply answering your question.
You're out of order.
you're out of order?
Yes, sir, I'm out of order. I'm answering your question.
You're not speaking. This is not open to the public.
Questions go to Paul, not the audience.
Go ahead. This information helps.
I have a question for Courtney.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you talk to us about the insurance?
Did we, last time I understood, maybe misunderstood, that yourself and Lisa were shopping it around, for
Yeah.
lack of a better.
Yep, absolutely. So as it stands right now, we are still in the process of looking at all of our options. We don't ever want to kind of pigeonhole ourselves into one option. So we worked with our insurance broker, USI, both the town side and the school side, and we tried to look at 5 different options, to be honest. Some of those options didn't pan out because the vendors actually didn't want to quote us for insurance. So we were able to get a couple of quotes through our insurance broker. We have had a couple of meetings, both the town, our insurance brokers, and ourselves to really dive into the numbers to see what makes the most sense. We are still evaluating plans, but we have heard that we are We do have preliminary acceptance into the state partnership plan if that's the route we go, but that is something that we are still in the process of making sure that the town and the school are both in line. And the numbers that you see in our budget are projected with the information that we received from our insurance broker on our projected insurance costs for next year.
So what I hear you saying is that you have two estimates right now.
Yes.
Did you project the more expensive one or?
We haven't made a final decision. That's something that we really need to make sure that the town and the school are in line with, unless you want to.
I mean, just to answer your question, so we actually went out, so I presented here on insurance previously. I presented on the high needs group that we have, and I talked to some of those pieces. We budgeted the least expensive plan with the assumption that we were going to be accepted. The other plan, the initial quote we have is about $460,000 more for next year if we were to try to replicate the plan we have this year.
Thank you. And that's not for self-insured, that's
That
commercial.
would be self-insured.
That would be self-insured.
If we continue to self-insure, the projections we have would be to not go $900,000 more. It would be about $1.3 million, $1.35 million was the projection we got from Tom at USI. The town got projections as well. We actually are doing those meetings in conjunction with the town and having the conversations together. So it's myself, Courtney, Kevin, and Lisa looking at all these pieces. They're going out to Anthem, getting a bid from Anthem. They're going out to Cigna, getting a bid from Cigna. It was the consultant's recommendation after looking at all the numbers and all the pieces that we make applications to the state plan.
And Mr. Patton, would you explain to me, you mentioned that high school would go into industrial certification.
Sure. So let me explain some of what that is. So part of what our high school does is we partner with the Eastern Workforce Investment Board. And EWIT, for those who don't know, is an incredible group here at Eastern Connecticut that helps get students into the manufacturing industry. We still have such a rich manufacturing industry here, whether it be the tooling here in Plainfield or plastics up in Putnam. Westminster has been an incredible partner for us. They're very active in the Eastern Workplace Investment Board. What they've done is they've helped us build curriculum at the high school to give students preliminary skills or certifications. And then we partner for students who want to go further, either in summer programs or with adult ed programs, to help them get to those next steps so they can actually earn certifications. I can get to the Board of Finance what those certifications are. My fear is if I say it in a public meeting and they say, "Can you believe you said CTSI and it's really CTMI?" I would make a mistake, but I can tell you what those are. I do know that we are working on CNA certification at the high school right now.
I was more inquiring, like, what's the difference between what we're going to do at our high school and maybe Ellis Tech?
So, Ellis has different grants from the state that allow them to do things like HVAC. They allow them to get electrical certifications. That's not something that we're given funding from the state to do, and in fact, the state doesn't want us to step on their toes too much. We get a Perkins grant, which allows us to have students do work in those areas. We are doing work in welding. We are doing work in the wood shop and other areas along those lines. Our goal is when I interviewed for this job 5 years ago, the board asked me the question, what do you think we should do for those students who are not going to college, either because they've chosen not to or because it's financially out of bounds for them to do? And my answer was that our high school has to be as ready as possible to have those students be as ready for the job when they leave our high school. And we focus on that. That's why we run a class for every seniors on interviews. That's why we do those things that we have. We just had a group of students go up and interview yesterday. Electric Boat was doing hiring in Thompson. We've got a teacher who put them all on a van, took them up there. I would say that 6 of the 8 were dressed really well for interviews. That's things that we work on with the students to try to put them in those positions. When I left high school, I had no idea what I was going to do. But our goal is to put kids in a position where they can be Wow.
So I have a question on the budget numbers. 700 object code, so it says equipment, and there's an increase of almost $90,000 for this year from last year. What is that for?
Can I take a look at the page with you? So what you're looking at is an aggregate for all equipment within the district. So if you break that down by the sites, this is Brandon, do you know which site has the largest equipment increase?
Yes, that was the district-wide. A lot of it is the computers and technology is coded under 700 object code.
So if you look at, that's probably O10, or is that all?
Yep, 10.
If you look at the page that has O10, you'll probably see that increase there. We had originally budgeted, if you look at our technology plan that's on the district website and what we've submitted every year, to replace it, we have 1,700 students in the district. Of those 1,700 students, approximately 1,200 of those students use Chromebooks. We budget to replace 250 Chromebooks a year. What is a 5-year replacement cycle? The reason why we have a 5-year replacement cycle is based on the license of the software. When the license ages out, we're no longer able to do state testing on them. So if you look at the cost of 250 Chromebooks plus a case, we try not to get our students the smallest Chromebooks, because when we do that, we tried one year to save money on the Chromebooks, and we bought slightly smaller ones. And what we discovered was when the students were doing the state testing, which we're talking about right now, we're asking them to look at the smallest screen, so we now buy a 14-inch screen. So those Chromebooks are between $250 and $300 a piece. So that's where you're seeing that increase, and we didn't cut it this year.
The other increase is capital improvement, which is our 799 object code, which from the prior year, capital improvement was reduced quite a bit. So that accounts for, I think, some of the other dollar amount increase besides computers and technology.
So the other question that I have is from listening to our local Winnie radio and different schools in different towns, there seems to be a consensus growing from a lot of the admins of other towns that the state of Connecticut really is not supplying to our local towns the money they maybe should be. There hasn't been increases for the towns on a state level in a very long time, and it's creating a major deficit for the local towns. So my question is, do you think that's Plainfield affected by that?
I do, and I can tell you that I was part of writing a letter to the state that I believe Steve Rio went on Winnie and talked about. My signature is on that letter looking for funding. I've gone down and submitted testimony on 4 different items to the state related to funding. I presented that testimony at all of our Board of Education meetings. It's interesting. As superintendent, I'm always asked to be politically neutral because I want every parent to feel they can always walk up to me. And for that reason, I have been hesitant to go on Winnie and make demands of the state and say you're not funding this area appropriately and do those pieces because I was concerned that I would turn off members of the community and have them not support the schools. I've been surprised by the amount of positive feedback my letters on that and electric busing and other people have, and the desire for members of the community to see their superintendent advocating for the state for more resources. And I've been having conversations with my team about how to do that more. But if you look at that letter, that you'll see my name is signed on that letter as one of those pieces.
And is there anything as a town, the Board of Finance, we can do to assist in that?
I haven't thought about that. Let me think about that. I'm sure the answer is yes.
And I don't know that we could cross-pollinate, if you would. Have you thought about utilizing the services of the grant writer that the town pays, just to see what's out there? Do you have your own grant writer?
So our assistant superintendent of schools writes our grant as part of what they do. We just were awarded 2 days ago a grant regarding electric water fountains. We applied to the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection, and they're giving us funds and 4 electronic water filling stations for those pieces. So we are regularly pursuing and writing grants. However, the idea of using the town's grant writer is a good idea because there's always more grants out there. The challenge is that most of the grants require you to supplement and not supplant. And we worked very hard. If you go back 3 years, you may have seen on the news towns where people were filling the meetings and they were saying, our schools added all these positions with the Art Besser grants and the COVID grants, and now these grants are going away and we're losing all these pieces. We were well aware when I started in 2021, we were having conversations about the fiscal cliffs grants cause, and we were trying very hard to use that money on facilities and professional development. Us being able to move out of the early childhood, some of that money came out of grants. And we tried very hard to not put us in a situation where I can deliver a service, where someone has a child who's getting a service, and that's based entirely on a grant. It's something like mental health. And then all of a sudden we lose that grant and this child no longer has a counselor. We lost, in partnership, a group that we still have funding for, which was providing opioid counseling to students in the town of Plainfield. They were actually working with 20 families. And because they lost their other funding, not the funding we were providing, but their federal funding, that group moved out. So we're currently seeking someone who can provide that because we do have opioid funds from the town. We simply haven't been able to find anyone to fill that contract. But that's a good idea.
Speech services, certified salaries, you had 2 open positions last year that were not funded at all, and this year you're looking to fund them at $65,000 or $130,000.
If you take a look at what we did in last year's budget, when we were unable to fill those positions, that money exists in that budget in contracted services. So I have to then pay someone to come in. It is far more expensive, about 1.5 times more expensive to pay someone to come in than to have your own staff. So I always target that we're going to be able to hire and bring someone in because that's our goal. And if you watch our board meetings, our board chair will tell you, I think I put out a pitch for speech and language services at the end of every board meeting.
I'm just going to ask one more question.
Sure.
Maybe. I think it's district-wide psychologists. It looks like there were 3 of them that go to specific schools. And are they also scaled, salary scaled?
Yes.
Stepped? They
yes,
are?
Yes,
Okay.
they're stepped, as are BCBAs. Those people. Many of those qualifications, like a social worker, they're actually under the teacher's contract.
Okay.
The reason why we have them so it's, when I first came to education, I learned school psychologists. I imagined someone sitting with the students on a long couch, talking to the students, but that's not what school psychologists do. Their largest role is actually testing and performing psychological testing and determining what students' needs are. And then from there, they do quite a bit to support programming and the teams, and they actually do quite a bit of work to design special education programs. We have some psychologists who may be assigned specifically to a program of high-need students. So if we have 15 high-need special ed students, there may be one psychologist who primarily works with that program because the need is so high. And then we have other psychologists that may split, say, between who's up in Shepherd Hill, or actually it's more like Shepherd Hill in the high school because they're on the same campus, so that they can meet with students and respond to those pieces. We do the same thing with social workers, so that we can have the social workers do that, especially if we can keep social workers in the same community.
So would the salary steps actually equate for the 5.1% increase for this coming year? It's just the different categories would total up to 5.1% in that specific line item?
So, largely yes.
Okay.
Because we're not adding a lot of positions. And when we get a retirement, so if you look at a top step teacher makes around $88,000-$90,000 based on their degree. If we get a retirement, in most areas we will adjust that and adjust in the budget in some places. If you see a budget at, Mrs. Brandon, is it 65.5? Is that about what we budgeted your position at?
Yes, 65,000.
About 65,000. If you see 65,000 straight on the budget next to a name, that means that that's a retirement we're projecting to come out, and we're projecting someone to come in about that range, which is about step 6 masters. We can do that in things like social studies. I have a retirement in Spanish. I don't know what step I'm going to have to find somebody to come in and teach Spanish at the high school level.
So the psychologists are they doctorates? Are they masters? What are they?
I would have to get back to you specifically on the degree.
Just curious.
I wouldn't want to.
Hefty salary.
Psychologists are high salaries, so are BTBAs. I would say that right now the largest commanding salaries are anything within support services or special education, and we're seeing a growth in outside companies that provide special education services to schools because they don't have their own staff, and those companies are regularly competitively recruiting our staff.
So you have an athletic director who's moving up to assistant principal at the high school, correct?
We do.
Okay, your athletic director is now an incoming, and I don't know the answer to this, that's why I'm asking the question. So an incoming athletic director would start at step one?
Correct, and we actually increased the duties of the athletic director, provided some other things like recruitment and partnership with places like you had mentioned, the private schools. So things that we have put into the role of this, because there's a natural reason why an athletic director may talk to students at another school about programs it offers. So we formalized that within the program. We're actually going to the Sterling board meeting to introduce Scott Elliott out there. They also have some responsibilities regarding oversight of maintenance, field, some other pieces that we expanded when we redesigned the position because we had the athletic director position for a year. We were fortunate to have Tom Hardy as AD. He's a talented person. I'll say right now, it wouldn't surprise me if 10 years from now he's standing where I'm standing. He's a very talented person with deep roots in this town. And when the assistant principal position opened up and he indicated he was interested, it's hard to keep a good man down.
Do you know approximately how many students we're looking at taking at East Sterling?
I don't. I can tell you it'll be one of the smallest classes we've taken now. Okay. Less than 10.
Oh, really? And where do they send the rest of their kids?
So they send them the same place as we do. But we're also getting competition from Killingly, who's recruiting very hard. If you haven't noticed, Killingly has bought a billboard, 395 recruiting for their high school regionally. We're in a time where all of the high schools in the region, because there's less students, are recruiting for students. Putnam High School is recruiting, Turzlot is recruiting, Parish Hill has lowered their tuition to try to recruit more students. So we're seeing an increased recruitment for students, which is why we talk about things at the high school, like having plays, like having drama, like having a robotics team. Those become things families look at when they choose what school to select. Our robotics team did just take first place in the state in coding, by the way. I think the kids from Farmington were a little surprised on Plainfield did.
Appreciate it. I'm not going to do that to you.
If you have any further questions, please email them to us. I know Mrs. Brannon has been working diligently responding both to community members and board members' questions. We did our best to deliver the best budget we could to you. I'm happy to talk to you any items. If you have very specific items, my hesitancy standing up here is that I recognize as superintendent, if you ask me what the $1,700 spent for baseball was, and I tell you it was spent for balls, and it turns out it was spent for socks, someone's going to call me on it. So if I don't know the specifics, I'll tell you I don't know the specifics, but I'll get to you what the budget plan is. Thank you very much.
Any further questions from the board? Okay, thank you for all your questions, or answers to our questions tonight.
Thank you, and thank you to our special Samantha Derenfeld, who volunteered back there to be my aide.
Did great over there. Okay. All we have left is adjournment. Oh, I make a motion to adjourn. Okay, all in favor, raise your hand.